and I'm about to interview an awesome a couple of guys that I just met, and I've looked at their material over the last few days, and I thought it was amazing. I don't know if some of you guys are aware of Ron Wyatt, but it's kind of like that Indiana Jones kind of feel to it, but it's real. I've looked at the information, and it's just blown me away. I know that some of these other archaeologists and people that have gone in and looked at artifacts from Israel always have interested me. Everything that around this topic interests me because it does point in the direction of our soon coming king. And a lot of what's happened with the regathering of Israel and all of these artifacts that bolster the facts of the Bible are just found on a daily basis in many ways. I think not a daily basis, but I mean, it's something that it's a recurring thing that takes place because of all the archaeological excavations that are taking place around Israel. And I know there's a lot of politics involved, and this is another thing that might be hindering some of the findings that we know are there because of what they're going to share with you in just a few minutes. And I just want to introduce you guys to these guys. I got two guys here. One is named Jim. Let me make sure I got it right here. Jim Beck. Let's see, Barfield. I was going to say Barfield. Jim Barfield and Chris Knight. And I just want to put you guys on screen here. Let me get your thing up here on my screen here. There we go. I split screened you here for just a moment here. I've got a full screen for you guys too as well so that we can go to all the information. They're going to share with you guys their screenshots and their all of their evidence and their maps and every little thing that they want to get into. We just want to get into, and I just want to listen. I've just now really got into some of their information online. They've had documentaries done on this as well. Now, Jim, God bless you, brother. It's good to meet you. And I just was kind of curious. Now, how long ago did all this begin? I think it was I heard was 2006. Was that about the time when this all began?
Yep, December the 21st, I believe, 2006.
December 21st, 2006. Now, I found the story interesting with the way you met Chris and how that all began before you actually figured this out. You're an investigator by trade, by business, and in the past, I guess you're retired now, but back then you used to be a arson fire investigator. Now,
yes, it was.
But you met Chris before you even found all this stuff out, right?
Yeah, I met him probably a year or two before I made this discovery, and we met during Sukkot, one of the biblical feasts at Lake Murray, Oklahoma, down by the Red River.
So you guys were celebrating you guys are Messianic in your faith, and which is also, I believe it's biblical. If you go back to the original New Testament, it's based in Judaism. But it's good that I think a lot of times people like to celebrate some of the festivals in the way they're applied to the faith even today, because it's not just something that took place in the first century. But you guys were celebrating Sukkot, and you guys happened to be across the lake, is what I heard, right? And he didn't know who you were?
I'll let Chris tell that part. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, actually, yeah, the connection started with me. There was a gentleman that came through our camp. We were in Buzzard's Roost. He was in Marietta's Landing on the other side of the lake, and a gentleman by the name of Patrick, he would show up every year. And he had heard about Jim somehow. And I was out in front of my tent. It was just middle of the afternoon, and he'd mentioned that there was a gentleman across the way who had this timeline on butcher paper, and he thought, it'd be really interesting to see if we wanted to connect. And I said, yeah, sure, let him know. And so they got a hold of some guys at our camp, got a hold of Jim, and then a few days later, Jim and some of his sons came over to the camp, and we met around a table, and he rolled out his huge timeline. Back then, he wasn't Excel savvy yet, so he had it all on his butcher paper. And that's when we all gathered around. That was the first time that Jim and I had actually met.
Wow, that's great. And then so at that point, and I remember you said, this was what I wanted to bring out because I've kind of done a little research on you guys just in the last few days. But you had a dream. You had a dream before you met him, which I always like to go through my dreams too. Sometimes I'll even share them on air because I really believe you get information in the dream state, especially sometimes when the Lord wants to tell you something. And so what happened with this dream that you had before you met him?
Yeah, well, actually, I'd already knew Jim before. The dream was actually after. I met Jim, and we probably met in like 2003 or so at Sukkot, and we'd already known each other. But the year of 2006, this was probably a month or two before he made the discovery. It was really on me that year to be very attentive where I went and did Sukkot. And so as I prayed about it, Jim kept coming to mind. So I called Jim up and said, hey, can I come and Sukkot with you guys? And of course, Jim being the hospitable guy he is, he said, sure, come over. He had an extra tent. And so during that time at that Sukkot is when I had the dream. And the dream simply was Jim had come into the tent. He was very urgent about something. He was calling me out. And as we went out, Jim kind of faded off in the distance. And he was pointing to a desert region to his left. And as I looked over, I could see all these holes in the desert, and I could see a mound. And I didn't understand what it meant. So in my own mind, I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And then a very commanding voice says, Jim is 95% accurate. I still didn't know what it meant. Anyway, I go back into my tent. I feel this urgency to get ready. Jim's going to come get me for something. So the next morning I get up. Jim and I go to have coffee. We sit around the morning fire, and I begin to share with him, this odd dream that I had. And because nothing had happened with the project at the time, we didn't have any clue what was going on. I think Jim was just in the process of meeting Vendel Jones, because Vendel Jones was supposed to come that year and speak, but something happened and he never made it. And it was right after that Jim, I think, went to meet Vendel Jones. And then 2 months later is when he made the discovery. So that dream was about 2 months before the discovery.
Now, can you also tell us who Vendel Jones is and just give a little background on him?
Sure. Jim, you want to?
Yeah, I'll fill in the hole on that one. Vendel Jones, I met him through a lady online, and a strange set of coincidences took place, and wound up at his home about 2 weeks after I had met this lady. Took my wife and grandkids, and we went down there, and my son and his wife had a wonderful time. Vendel considered himself the Indiana Jones. He was a Copper Scroll guy at that time. He's since passed. Chris and I went to his funeral a few years ago. But Vendel introduced me to the Copper Scroll. I knew about it. I was interested in it, but I wasn't interested in it. It was, to me, it was just a treasure map. And I wanted the deeper, prophetic, really deep biblical stuff.
Right.
But he corrected me. He said, Jim, that Copper Scroll has got more prophecy in the first lines of it than a lot of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And he was a big Dead Sea Scroll guy. So I listened to him. And he told me the story over the weekend, and we sat and visited with him. And he got me fired up on it. So I thought, you know what? At some point, I may just decide to try to figure out this Copper Scroll. So that's who Vendel Jones is.
Now, what did you find that Vendel Jones didn't already know? How did you come across all this information? How did you figure this out?
Vendel, and I got to give him credit for credit is due. He told me about the 5 men that wrote the Copper Scroll. He told me about the timing of it, and I already agreed that the Dead Sea Scrolls were from Jeremiah's time frame and not King Herod's temple during that time frame. So what I did is I applied investigative techniques to the Copper Scroll rather than haphazard or a Kabbalistic or some kind of mystical. It's not a mystical document, guys. It's the Copper Scroll is a straightforward, go here, look for this building feature, look for this structure, dig 7 cubits deep and find these, 900 talents of gold. I mean, it's just straightforward. It's not a mystical thing where you gotta, it's really simple. Once you understand it, here's what I found that really made the difference is I figured out that the Copper Scroll wasn't talking. Everybody thinks it's scattered all over Israel, that they buried it in, this part of Jerusalem, somewhere in the south of Israel. No, it's all buried in one location, because the instructions on the Copper Scroll say this: under the ruins in the Valley of Achor. I knew the Valley of Achor. The only set of ruins that I was familiar with, because I'd been studying the Dead Sea Scrolls, was Qumran. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I'll give it a try, see what happens. And within 5 minutes, I knew how to understand the Copper Scroll.
Now the Valley of Achor, as the Copper Scrolls dictates, is that it's under the valley, in the Valley of Achor, under the ruins.
Right.
Now the Valley of Achor is the top half of the Dead Sea. It kind of goes all the way around the top half, right? That's about the Valley of Achor, and it encompasses how many miles?
Oh, it extends from probably about 10 miles below Qumran to the south, all the way up, probably within 20 miles of the Sea of Galilee, in that area.
Okay, so you're talking about just a specific region that is telling you in this map, and it really is like a map, right?
Yeah, it's a verbal map.
It's a verbal map. And it was written on copper scrolls for a reason, because they wanted this map to last for a long time.
Yeah, and they wanted it to last millennium, 2 millennium. And certainly they wanted it to last 70 years, because at the time they buried all these items, which, let me tell the people, these items that they buried were temple artifacts, temple vessels, ingots of gold and silver and gems for the rebuilding of the temple. Now, guys, listen to me. I had a very prominent rabbi in Israel. He saw my research and he said, Mr. Barfield, he said, do you know what this means to my people? And I told him, yes, I know what it means. It means the same thing to my people. And he said, what you have found is the dowry for the coming bride. And it floored me that a rabbi would say something like that. But it makes so much sense whenever
now, what did he mean? What did he mean by that, in terms of, because we would take it as Jesus' return? How did he interpret that?
He meant for the coming king, the Messiah, that will rule and reign. It would be the dowry, the money that would be needed, like with any bride, that they would be able to build their home. They would be able to buy the furnishings that they needed. And that's what he was implying. When he wasn't implying, he was telling me that. So that's where all this idea of the dowry came from.
Now, I've speculated, and I talked to you a little bit on the phone before we started this interview yesterday, and last night I talked to you a little at length, and I talked to you about Yehuda Glick. Mm-hmm. Now, Yehuda Glick, I remember he had come on to a broadcast on YouTube, and he was talking about a gold mine that he had, or that he was trying to develop. Now, you've talked to Yehuda Glick yourself, and he had said that this gold that he knew was buried in a certain area because the satellites, he said, were able to detect it. And there is technology out there that can detect precious metals in the ground, types of radar and stuff that's able to see. And he said that there was a very large deposit that he needed help trying to get to. This was before Yehuda Glick became a member of the Knesset. This was probably back in 2015, 2016, I'm thinking. Maybe a little longer, maybe 2014. And so he was really intent on getting this gold because he felt that this gold would be used to rebuild the second temple or the third temple. We're talking about the third temple, right? No, we're talking about the fourth temple, right? You were telling me this is the fourth, right?
It'll be the third cornerstone that will be laid.
Okay, the third cornerstone. We're not talking
but it will be actually 4 temples. This will be the 4th temple. You can include Solomon's, Herod's, Zerubbabel's. So, yeah, this one would be the 4th one.
Okay, so he was saying that this gold that he was going to try to excavate and mine out was going to be, because he's a part of the whole Temple Institute trying to get the rebuilding of the temple going on in Jerusalem. He said this gold would be a part of furnishing that temple. He said because the temple needs a lot of gold to be according to the way the scriptures, had it designed. But what I was thinking was that possibly and you've talked to Yehuda Glick, you were telling me about this,
Mm-hmm.
that possibly this gold may be the gold because he never actually got that gold out of that mine. I was thinking, and this was something that came across when I was talking to you, that possibly the gold that we've seen, and we've seen this through your ground penetrating radar. You guys have a machine that's very expensive that was they allowed you to use to go out there on Qumran and look at this, and you guys saw all the signatures under the ground, and it's all there. You guys got all the pictures and everything on this, and I want everybody to see this. That this gold and everything else that's underneath there, what you say is the dowry, could be possibly what is going to be used to rebuild the fourth temple, if you will, the fourth temple. That's what I was thinking. And but it just blew me away when I saw all the evidence that you guys have on this. So just continue on. I don't want to interrupt, and I just want to make sure that you know that I've put a lot of these things together for the audience here to come to their conclusions.
Yeah, Yehuda Glick and I had talked. Actually, we met probably about the same time that you're talking about. He contacted me through a gentleman by the name of Moshe Feiglin. And Moshe Feiglin, who was the deputy speaker of the Knesset at that time, he and I talked. We had a meeting in New York City, and he really liked what I was telling him. And he was angry that the Israelis weren't letting me to excavate to get these things out of the ground. Well, he joined me at Qumran, me and Chris, my wife, my son, and some of the other guys, Matt Kaiser, a good buddy of mine. We were at Qumran, and under his authority, we scanned Qumran with this really powerful metal detector, and we got some amazing results from that scan.
Do you happen to have the pictures of those scans?
Yeah, I do. Let's go a little bit further in what we're talking.
Sure.
I'll pull them up for you.
Sure. If however you want to do it, just tell me.
Yeah.
So you got those scans, and I just think that everybody should get it, the background. Just lay it out about how it's structured, Qumran, and all the overlays and how it looks just like a small Jerusalem. It's only like 12 miles away from Jerusalem. Qumran is not that far, and you said it was a depository or treasury. Back in the day, it was used as a treasury for Jerusalem, right? Is that correct?
Yes, it's my opinion that that's what that was for. I absolutely believe that. And I will show you guys some of the information from some of my research so you will understand what I'm talking about. Qumran and Jerusalem. Matter of fact, you want me to pull up an image of it now?
Yeah, what I want you to do is I want you to just kind of go from the beginning and just kind of lay it all out. I'm just going to stand back and I'm going to put you on full screen, and you can just go ahead and share your screen and talk. And just tell everybody from kind of, if you were to lay it out for a beginner that hasn't seen this information, just kind of lay it out the way you would in some kind of a discussion or a talk.
Okay. Well, what I'm gonna show you guys right now is, as I was doing my research on the Copper Scroll, I knew that these items, there's 4 ancient documents that talk about the Copper Scroll, give evidence that the Copper Scroll, all these items were hidden during the time of Jeremiah's ministry, if you want to call it that. And as I was doing that, I thought, you know what, I need a map of Jerusalem at the time of Jeremiah. And I found one. But when I saw the map online, I thought, well, why in the world did they draw Qumran upside down? And I thought, oh my gosh, it was Jerusalem. And I thought, what is going on here? Because Jerusalem looked like an upside down map of Qumran. So let me see if I can share this with you. Let me know if you see it. This is what I saw. The map on the right is the one that I saw. Can you see that?
Yes.
Is it on there?
It looks good. Yes.
Okay. This map, if you can see my cursor, is the map that I found of Jerusalem. And this is the exterior walls of Qumran.
That's an ancient map of what Jerusalem looked like back in ancient times.
Yes. Now watch this. All of these names that are on here, except for one, are all of these are from the Copper Scroll, and they describe it, and they placed all these things. Now, this is after I'd done my research. All this in the yellow was already done. But look, here's the fountain. This is called the Fountain Gate in Jerusalem. This is a pool of Siloam. This is the double entry mikveh at mikveh is a baptismal pool. This is a water system of Qumran. This is a water system for Qumran, Jerusalem. Look at this. King's Pool, Gihon Springs, the Water Gate, the Siloam Water Canal. It's not identical, but the features are all the same. Here's the temple in Jerusalem. Here is the building that represents the temple at Qumran. Ram's Pen, Sheep's Gate, Sheep's Pool, Sheep's Gate, Women's Gate, Women's Tower. This is the women's house at Qumran. Now, again, all these names are the ones that are named on the Copper Scroll. This one over here is where the watchtower is at Qumran, which is actually includes the base of that is the treasury. Here are the multiple towers at Qumran. In Jerusalem. So you see what I'm talking about. When I saw that, I went to talk to some experts in Jerusalem, and they were floored. They were just in awe that. And I also talked to the some members of the Sanhedrin, the current Sanhedrin in Jerusalem. They were all just absolutely floored by this. Now I'm going to stop sharing for a minute, and I'm going to let you ask some questions while I get set up here.
Okay, great. Yeah, it looks really good, what we're seeing on screen there. So that's really awesome that you're able to share those pictures with us. Now, I know you've got some, ground penetrating software, or not software, but machinery that is able to see what's underneath. Now, you said there were 57 points that the Copper Scroll said you needed to look for certain treasures in these 57 points. Now, these 57 points have been found perfectly as an overlay. You have found every single one of those points that the Copper Scrolls said, right? In Qumran.
Yes, there's only one of them that's a little weak. I'm not positive, but I believe I found it. And here's the interesting thing about it. And I'm going to show you those the details on the scans that we did here in just a second. The interesting thing about this is I found all of these locations within the walls of Qumran except for two. Two of those are actually the same location. Two of them are a cave that is described on the Copper Scroll, and it's location number 3 and location number 57. They are, and I'm gonna go over those with you. And I'm actually going to show you pictures of it, so you'll know I'm not joking. This is not something I'm throwing out there to everybody. But I want to show you. Or would you rather I showed the results after I show them the details on the map? Which would you prefer? All right.
However, sorry, I didn't have my mic on. However you think it would be best, you go ahead and just lay it out.
Okay. Well, what I'm going to do is I am going to pull up my actual. I'm going to do screen share, and I'm going to pull up my research so you guys can see it. Let's see here.
And guys, I've seen all this stuff. It's amazing. You just have to sit back. I mean, he could be on here for hours showing you guys this stuff, but it is great.
Let me do that. I'm going to pull up a better one for you because I want you to see this. I'm going to give you, I think I may give you a little more than what I'd planned on. If that's okay with you, of course.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we got time.
Okay. Let me do a screen share, and here we go. Okay. This is my primary research. It's broken into three levels. It's a narrative, which is kind of like what I do with whenever I did a report for a district attorney. You've got the narrative, your ideas of what happened, and then you have expected testimony, and it gets more technical. Well, at the end of it, you give them the main details, and that's what this is the report that has won favor with the head of the Antiquities Authority, Shupert Dorfman, the head of the Masada, Etan Campbell. I could just go down a laundry list of men and rabbis in Israel that have said, oh my goodness, this guy has actually done this. Well, here's what it says. This is the first line on the Copper Scroll. That's actually a facsimile from the Copper Scroll. And this is Hebrew, modern day Hebrew. This is the translation. And these are the catalog numbers for each word. So and if you got a Strong's Concordance at home, all you got to do is look these words up, H5911, H6010, and you'll find that the matching, the words that I'm using here match these ancient words up here. So it says, under the ruins in the Valley of Achor. I knew where the Valley of Achor was at. That's just region between the two red lines. And I knew where the ruins were at, Qumran. Or that's the set of ruins that I was going to start with. If it didn't match that one, then I was going to move on to another set of ruins. Again, under the ruins in the Valley of Achor, this is the map that I used whenever I did this. This is a very detailed map of Qumran, and it's all exactly to scale. I actually did this off of a satellite image. And all of the gray areas, I'm going to zoom in. Can you see the zoom? These are the gray areas are paved. I wanted all the paved areas to be obvious. That way, whenever I was doing the research, if it appeared to go to a paved area, well, you can't bury stuff under pavement. So, or you could, but it'd be very difficult. So here's what I did. Under the ruins in the Valley of Achor, and it says, at the steps extending eastward, 40 cubits long, are silver service vessels weighing 17 talents. Now, how much does a talent weigh? Do you have a clue?
How much?
A talent weighs, the best guess. Chris, do you remember what it is? Are you there, Chris?
Yeah. It's been a while. 70?
75 pounds.
75 pounds, yeah. I knew it was in
So,
the 70.
17 times 75 pounds. The guys in the audience, you do the math on that. But we're talking about what? Silver service vessels. That is an enormous amount. See here? Silver service vessels. They're talking about vessels that were utilized in the temple. And again, this is not Herod's temple. This is King Solomon's temple and or the tabernacle. And we're going to get to that in just a few minutes too, the tabernacle. So we're looking for a set of steps heading east that are 40 cubits long. Well, when you look at this big map, you look for a set of steps. There's only one set of steps heading east at Qumran. And they are exactly, we measured them. I got a document that was written by Yitzhak Magen and Yuval Peleg, and I used their scale on there and measured it exactly, and it came out to be 40 cubits. That was exciting, but I thought it was probably just a coincidence. So here it is. Here's an actual picture of it. Now, today it doesn't look like this because there's a walkway that they've built over it, which covers up a lot of the stuff that we need to be able to see. But luckily, I got these pictures before they ever built a walkway. Off in the background right here, that is the Dead Sea. That blue is thicker, darker blue line, that's the Dead Sea. But you see it's heading east, and it is exactly 40 cubits long. Now I'm going to go to location number 2. This one is pretty interesting. Listen to what it says. Accommodated in the built mound of the dry cistern is gold in the dry fountain of the great ruined courtyard of the peristyle. In the soft mire is hidden polished gold. In front of the highest opening, there are 900 talents. How much did we say a talent weighed?
25 pounds.
Yeah. That is somewhere in the vicinity of 1 billion, 100 million.
800,000. Last time you said it was actually was 1.5 billion because the price of gold has gone up.
Yes, it has gone up, and
It's almost,
just
yeah.
that's one location, guys. One. And we got 57, 55 more to go. We're not going to go through all of them.
And as you said, it's not the gold itself; it's actually what the gold is in its
Yes.
implements and everything else that's contained there. And it's a historical find. It's not just gold.
But you're talking about what do they call it? Time capsule of all times. This is it. That cave, if that cave is truly there, and I do believe it is, and I may cover some of that as well. If it's truly there, Chris, why don't you tell him what could be inside of that thing?
Yeah, sure. In the cave, well, Jim had discovered 57 locations. He mentioned earlier that 2 of those locations identify a potential cave, location 3 and location 57. In a document called Treaty of the Vessels in Amalek, as Jim was talking about earlier with the 5 writers that Vendel had pointed us to, it talks about these gentlemen writing on copper plates. And it talks that the ark and the headband and many of the items from the tabernacle of Moses were written on these copper plates. And then it goes on to say, and all these items in the ground. And so the one location, I think is 57, that says in the gleaming chamber. And so when you look at what the gleaming chambers is in the Holy of Holies, it was always decked out with walls of gold. So whenever the menorah would be lit in there, it would gleam. The light would shine everywhere. And so the gleaming chamber is a reference to the Holy of Holies. And so in the entrance of this cave is supposedly, according to the research that Jim found, is another scroll, which is possibly the other copper scroll, that has all these items. So if location 3 and location 57 are leading us up to this cave at the far north end, and in that cave are all the items that Jeremiah and Baruch took during the siege of Babylon. Before they went into Babylon for 7 years, they carried these things down and they buried them in a cave. And so there could be the ark, the breastplate, the items of the showbread, everything that's needed for starting up that was of Moses, and the items that were of Solomon could potentially be in that cave. It could be the biggest storehouse of wealth ever found if everything that we potentially think is there is there.
Now, real quick here, because this all lined up on the map, the way they laid it out, and the way the ground-penetrating radar found these signatures, that there is precious metals underneath these locations that you have all pinned out. It was all in a line pointing to this supposed cave, or you said it was a depression that actually, with the ground-penetrating radar, found also some signatures of precious metals. So it was like lined up in a line, like they were pointing to it on these different places where they buried different parts of the treasures. There's a lot of different areas under the ruins of Qumran that point in a straight line to this cave, right?
Yeah, locations. Can you still see the screen okay? Okay, there's location number 1, remember, was that 40 cubit mikvah. Let me see if I can get, there we go. That mikvah is right here. And this area right here is where the silver service vessels were buried at. Then if we go back up to location number 2, the one that we're on right now, it gives the indication of, it describes it incredibly well, talking about by the Great Ruined Courtyard, which is this right here. This is where they buried it. Well, then you go up to, you're not going to be able to see it on here right now, but if you went straight in a line from this location to this location and continued that line all the way out for another 300 meters, you would come to a spot that is at the end of an oval-shaped hill, and that is where I believe the cave is at.
They called this cave in the scroll, didn't they call it the Red Heap?
Yeah, it depending on how you translate it, and it can also be called the Hill of Kolit, which is a Hebrew word. So it's got a couple of different names, but they're all very similar. We call it the hill of color because it has a red hue to it. So those three lines, those three locations were in a perfectly straight line. But that's not all. There's more to that story than this. And let me show you something. Here is another picture. That's the same spot, this location, a red dot, only it's looking at it from the exact opposite direction.
Now, wait a minute. Stop right there. Is that the red heap of the mound there in the back?
No, that's actually the treasury.
Okay.
The red heap is behind us. I mean, if you were sitting there right now, it would be straight behind us. And I'll show you a picture of that in just a second. But that is where the 900 talents of gold would be buried at. That, guys, that's a tremendous amount of gold. Again, there's another look at it. All this concrete you see right here and the walls, these walls used to be about, I'm going to say about 8 feet high. Don't know exactly, but I believe they were about 8 feet high. And this whole thing was completely enclosed because that's what a peristyle is an enclosed courtyard. Now let's talk about that red heap a little bit more. In the red heap are the wine vessels of the gleaming chamber, the ephod, and an entire tenth of the tithe of pouring vessels from the treasury. Well, I know what a treasury is. I know what wine vessels are, but what is this gleaming chamber? Chris mentioned it earlier.
And really quick, the ephod was what they used in the gleaming chamber when the high priest would go into the gleaming chamber. This is where the Ark of the Covenant was and the Shekinah glory, right?
Exactly. Yeah, the ephod is what is called the breastplate. That is what the high priest put on the Day of Atonement. You see these movies where the high priest is wearing all this stuff around the breastplate and his turban. No, guys, that's not what happened. Only once a year did he put those things on, and that was on the Day of Atonement. And even whenever he went into the Holy of Holies, he took all of that off, and he only wore a simple white, it'd be like a robe, a thin robe that he put on. But he would enter humbly into the gleaming chamber, which if you got the Shekinah glory over the Ark of the Covenant, if you got the menorah glowing in there, because inside of the tabernacle and inside of every temple that was built, the walls of the temple were completely coated in polished gold. So if you got a mirror, then they were like mirrors. If you got golden mirrors inside of that chamber and you light a menorah, it's going to turn into a gleaming chamber. But more importantly, if the Shekinah glory is lighting up inside of the Holy of Holies, oh my goodness, do you ever have a gleaming chamber? So here we go. This is the red heap. This is looking almost in the same direction, but you see this outline right here? That is what we call the red heap. And on the opposite side of this is where that cave would be at. Again, this is a different hue. It's not that red. It just happened to look that way with the camera settings that I had. But you can see here, same thing. Now, this is the actual place where I believe that cave is at, where they buried all of the implements of the temple. And it even says in 2 Maccabees that they buried the tabernacle itself inside of this cave. That, can you imagine?
Now, another thing is that when you took this radar that you guys have, it's a very expensive piece of equipment. You actually found signatures of precious metals as well in this area, and it can tell you about how much is down there too, right? Doesn't it kind of give you a
yes? It gives you an image of what it looked like. And what I'd like to do, if I can do this, let me see if I can pull that. No, I want to go to a different one right here.
Isn't this great, guys? How many of you guys out there are enjoying this? This is amazing stuff. And if you got a little more background knowledge on this and do some more research on this, it'll all come together. There's a lot of other materials you can find on this on YouTube. And don't you have a book out or something on this as well?
Yeah, we do. Shelley Neese, she authored the book. She's the one that actually wrote it. I provided all the data for it. She wrote it. She did some of her own research on it too, as well, on some of the academic stuff. But this is what we've got.
You give us like information on that book too, as
Yeah,
well?
it's called the Copper Scroll Project, an ancient location fuels the battle for the Temple Mount. An ancient secret. I'm sorry, an ancient secret fuels the battle for the Temple Mount. That she did an amazing job. She did a wonderful job getting that book written. But that book, you should be able to find it. Go on Amazon or any of your bookstores and tell them to order it for if they don't have it on the shelves. But it's really, really good. It tells you, it doesn't give you any of my research. Don't even think about that. You're not going to get that. But it does give the whole story of the Copper Scroll Project. And it even tells about this scan that I have right here. Here's what we did. Moshe Feiglin, Chris Knight, and some of my buddies, we went and we scanned this area right here. We scanned this area right next to that. That's that treasury I've been telling you about.
Yeah, we
Over
can't
here,
see it. We're only seeing you right now.
Not sharing.
Yeah, share your
It's
screen.
not sharing. Let me press it again. I must have missed it whenever I did it.
Chris, you have a lot of pictures too, right?
Yeah, I don't have any queued up at the moment. It was kind of last minute, so I didn't really get a chance to pull some things up. So
No, we could do this.
apologize.
You guys, we could do another segment on this another time. If you guys have everything all in together, and this format that we have here on YouTube is great. And I think that we could really get this out there even farther than some other channels have. So, if you decide you want to do something like that again later with all of that information, definitely let's do it again.
Okay. Yeah, we can do some more. We could do an extended version of the actual locations or something along those lines. That'd be good.
Mhm.
Okay. This is test area number 1. Moshe Feiglin, Chris, and a team that we put together, Matt Kaiser. We scanned this with this powerful metal detector. You had to use a specific pattern. We tested this area. This is the great courtyard of the peristyle. We tested this area, which is the woman's house, and the dining area where they would actually do the dining at. Here is the location right in front of this building right here. That's where we scanned, and what you look for is mounds. And look at this. Look at that, guys. That's just unbelievable.
Wow.
How much is there. This is actually a strip of silver that was buried. And look at how much. And I buried 30 pounds of silver in my yard. And I scanned it with the exact same equipment. And 30 pounds of silver made this little tiny spot right here. Let's try to zoom in. This little spot right here. Just the tip of it.
Okay, now wait a minute. So you buried 30 pounds of silver, and it only gave you a small little itty bitty signature like that.
Tiny little, like that big. See the very top of that point?
Wow.
That's all it gave. Look at what the signal this gives. It's unbelievable. And all of these locations. Now you got to remember too that there's gemstones. Gemstones do not show up on a metal detector. So there was a lot more gemstones in this area as well. But that is a scan. This is a scan. This is a report that I sent to Moshe Feiglin, the Deputy Speaker of the Knesset. These are different.
What did Moshe say, the Speaker of the Knesset? What did he say about this?
He just was excited.
Was he the one that at first thought you were crazy, and then he ended up kissing you on both cheeks and saying amazing?
No, that was a rabbi that did that. That was a rabbi that did that, and everybody that I sat down with initially and told them that I'd figured out the Copper Scroll, they all thought I was crazy. But that's okay, because by the time I reached this point, and I showed them the 4th location, which is coming up. Once you see the 4th location, you just slap your forehead and say, okay. Anyway, that's what they did. They all, once you reach the layer, so I only had to show them 4 out of 57 locations. And they get it. because it's not complicated. It's very simple. And you ever heard of the term Occam's razor?
No.
Occam's razor is it's a term that they use, that the simplest answer is usually the best answer.
Okay.
And that's what I'm giving you, is the simplest answer of how this copper scroll, why it was written, how it was written, and how to locate all these items.
Now, why the guy that actually inspired you to look at the copper scrolls, why didn't he figure all this out?
He thought he had, and bless his heart, he was trying to do one of those that's all over the place ideas, and he was using Kabbalah and some other things, I believe. Now, I hope I'm not misspeaking here, but he just did it very different than what I did. I used investigative techniques. He used something entirely different. And I can't tell you
a book out called the Book of Hope. And if you read in there, he'll explain his theory on why he landed over at the Cave of the Columns. He was digging just north of Qumran at a cave called the Cave of the Columns. And if you go out there, there's a really large cave, and it has natural columns. And Jim and I have actually been up there and poked our heads down around inside there. And so, for whatever reason, he was landing up there somewhere. And when you read the theory in the book, it's very ungrounded. The good thing about Jim's research is it's, like he just said, it's very simple. You just, the steps heading east and the ruins in the Valley of Okor, location number 5. He's probably going to share that in a little bit. I mean, you can read it and then you can see it. You can read it, you can see it, and they just move from one progression to the other. So Vendel was close. I mean, he was very close. He was right up the hill.
Isn't Vendel the guy that they supposedly modeled the Indiana Jones movie, Ark of the Covenant? What was it called again?
Indiana Jones. That's what it was called. Yeah.
The Ark of the Covenant. Yeah.
Yeah. He thought so, and who knows? He said there were some people that were on his first dig or one of the digs that actually worked on the movie. So who knows? Maybe they did name it after them. They denied it. But I can see why they would deny it if the true, even if it was true. They wouldn't want to have to pay him, the rights to his story or something like that. Exactly. But I don't know. that was his thoughts. So, and I owe him a debt of thank you because he was the one that got me interested in actually trying to figure out the copper scroll.
It's amazing. Now, these signatures are very telling here. These are all. What you see on the screen, guys, is picking up a precious metal. So it has to be a precious metal, whether it's silver, gold, or whatever, right?
Non-ferrous, yeah.
Yeah, and the green. I'll zoom in here. This is the big courtyard, and over here, this big peak here, I believe that is the 900 talents. I only walked past it. I didn't go over it. We just clipped the side of it as we're scanning the whole courtyard.
Now, what about those things down there that look like boxes? They actually look like a box.
Well, the green is non-ferrous metals. So you could be right. Those two could be boxes sitting side by side, because all of this, according to the location, is supposed to be vessels from the temple.
Wow.
And this blue spot right here, that is actually supposed to have been from here to here. It should have been a long trench or ditch full of silver ingots. But what I think happened is at the second Zerubbabel's temple, whenever they came back out of exile, 70-year exile, now 2 of the 5 men that wrote this copper scroll, everyone in your audience that knows their Bible will know who I'm talking about. 2 of the guys that wrote this copper scroll, I believe, were young boys, 13 years old, probably, that went into exile with everybody, came back, and then they went and they told everybody this: Haggai and Zechariah, though both of those young men were telling everybody, build the temple. Stop building your own houses, get the temple built. And this is what Haggai said. He said, the gold is mine, the silver is mine, thus saith the Lord. I think what he was telling them is, come on, guys, get off your bottoms, get out here, let's get to work, and let's do the work of the Father, get this thing built, because we have what it takes to get it built. We've got the money. All we got to do is we got to have the motivation and the right heart.
Okay, so you said that trench. We'll get back to the trench. So you said some of that's missing.
Yes, this section of from here to here is missing, and this section from here to here is missing. And why they did that, I don't know. But they left this section right where it was buried at. Maybe they did that to say, excuse me, to say that this is where it was. This is what it used for, because this location has an unusual note in it. It says these things will be recovered at the appointed time. It's like they were saying, and then none of the others say that. It just says that this section or this strip would be recovered at the appointed time. And the appointed time would have been when they built the temple.
When they're building the temple.
Yeah.
Wow. Amazing.
So let me go to the next one.
Yeah.
Unless you don't want to see it, I'll stop.
No. I want to see everything.
Okay. This is the same one. That's the same one we just saw. That's that strip that's missing. Now we're going to get to test area number 3. Let me zoom out a little bit. Now we're going to do 4. Area 4. This is the cave. You see this, all that dirt that's been piled up? The last time we looked at this location, this was all smooth back in here. This mound wasn't here. This is in 2009. Chris and I went to Israel with a bunch of our guys, and we talked to an archaeologist into, matter of fact, this is the gentleman that, he was the lead archaeologist for Qumran. He loved our research. And he looked at it and he said, let's go dig. He said, I'm in charge of that area. Let's go out there and test it. So we were supposed to have gone 2 meters deep right here. That's like over 6 feet. We didn't. We only went like 3 feet, and he got a phone call. And Chris was there. He saw it. Got a phone call, and we stopped shortly thereafter.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. Anyway, another story for another time.
So that that mound of dirt is after you guys started excavating. That was what that dirt is from?
Yeah. That's we dug a trench right here, and next time we get on, I'll show you that.
Tell them about the Seam Man.
Yeah, right here. You see this? I'm going to zoom in again. You see that dark spot right there?
Yes.
Looks like a hole. Well, that's a shelf of concrete or plaster or mortar. We were digging right there, and that whole area right there opened up. And tell him what happened, Chris.
That's when he had all the workers back off, and he got in there and started dusting around and kind of poking around, and you could tell he was pondering that shelf, and he was you could tell he was checking something out. So we knew at that moment that he was probably seeing something, and he never admitted it, unfortunately, but he was seeing something.
Oh my gosh. And this is another thing that is, I have to wonder if maybe they've gone in there, and I know I talked to you about this, Jim, that maybe they went in there since you guys, because you haven't been there in a year, but you would know if they did some excavations, if you did go back.
Oh, yeah.
Do you guys have any feeling that possibly there might have been some excavations since you guys have been out of there, and maybe they didn't want you guys in there? Who knows? Maybe there was something else that they knew, wow, these guys found something, but we don't want them to know. We're going to go in there and do it ourselves.
Well, you know what happened is I shot a couple of TV shows back in March, April of last year. And almost a year ago, actually it was a year ago, I shot a couple of TV shows, and I always check. Every time I go to Qumran, I look to make sure no digging has been taking place. And up to that time, there was no disturbance at all. But you know what they did is we used to be able to walk out there. Chris and I used to walk up to the hill and look at that spot all the time. But they have shut down that entire area up there. You've got to get special permission. And they sent a guy with a gun up there with us when we filmed I did a show on history. Yeah, I did a show on History Channel. It's called In Search of with Zachary Quinto, and it was about the Ark of the Covenant. You can look it up online. We got like 400,000 hits now, or close to it. But we went out there and they blocked it. You can't go out there anymore. They have a reason for not letting people go out there. Shelley Neitz went out there with a preacher from Texas that did a story on it, and they yelled at him on the loudspeaker and made him go back down there.
Oh my gosh. So there's got to be something going on there. Now, if you went back there yourself, being that you were the lead investigator on this whole project, and the head archaeologist at Qumran likes you, is he still on the project, by the way? They would let you go back there, wouldn't they?
He died. Unfortunately.
Oh, no.
Yeah, he's a young guy too. He's just about to get his PhD. He was finishing up on it. He had 2 little girls and a sweet wife. And guys, he went inside of a cave.
Wait a minute. How did he died inside of a cave?
The cave collapsed on him.
The boulder rolled down. He was coming out, and a boulder rolled down the entrance and crushed him on the way out.
Oh wow, that's terrible.
Yeah, it was a horrible story. And the guy that Shuka Dorfman is the head of the Antiquities Authority of Israel, the top guy. And I think I told you about an Indian lady that introduced me to him here in Lawton, Oklahoma. She knew him. Anyway, he's passed away. So 2 of them have passed away. Luckily, I've got photographs of us all doing this stuff, so people know that this is not a joke. And I'll show you that next time we come on. But this is where we scanned this area, but next to this red line, this is where the cave is at. That yellow line is pointing to it. This is Qumran off in the distance. And there's location number 1, location number 2, location number 3, and they're in a straight line, guys. So that's kind of what I wanted to show you. Now let's look at the results of test area 4. I think I got them here. Yep, here we go. Look at this. Now, even with these, they're different frequencies. That's why they look different with a little bit different colors. There's different frequencies they use with this computer, but look, everything is stacked in straight lines.
Yep.
You see that?
Wow.
But look at that one. That one is just massive. But watch as we go down to the main one is bottom right. Look at that. Remember that tiny little speck is probably as big as that dot right there on the map. It was blue. Look at that. It's towering.
Wow.
The guy that actually developed the computer program and the device that got the images, he was begging me to tell him where this was at. Begging me to tell him, and I wouldn't do it. So you see what we've got here is a massive quantity. And we only scanned the area, the distance from here to here was probably about 30 feet. And from here to here is probably about 10 feet.
But wait a minute. You're telling us the guy wanted you to tell him where this was at. You're telling us where it's at right now.
Yeah. Yeah, but that was years ago. That's now. Now so, I'm telling people because we got to get this out here because there's 2 ways to protect these items. Listen, 1 is never tell anybody. 2 is tell everybody.
Exactly. The best way to stay safe is to get out there in public and let everybody know. And I understand why you're doing this now, because before nobody knew and it was still open for excavation. Now it's all politicized and there's all kinds of watching eyes on this location. Who knows what's really going on there? But you're doing this now publicly to try to get pressure on this area so that there can be some accountability or something.
Absolutely. And that's what I want is, Moshe Feiglin, he was a big, big help to us. We've got a lot of validation, lots of support. Let me tell you this story. Chris was with me. We went to the head of the archaeological departments for the West Bank, which is where this is at, West Bank and the Gaza Strip. The guy's name was Hanania Hizmi. Hanania, I gave him a presentation very similar to what I'm giving you, only more details. And he was, I tell everybody, the guy better never go to Las Vegas and play poker.
It's 18 hours.
Oops, sorry about that. Never go to Las Vegas and play poker because his poker face is terrible. I would show him something and his eyes would bug. I'd show him something and his eyes would bug. He'd try to regain his composure. But what he told me after this, I gave him the presentation. He said, Mr. Barfield, sometimes it's best to keep things secret. And I thought, oh my gosh. Well, another archaeologist got on board with me. He had been scanning and doing work in that area in the West Bank a lot. And he was a big friend of Hananya Hizmi. He told me this is not going to be a problem. I said, yeah, it is too. He said, no, I've been doing this for years. And I said, okay. So he goes to Hananya Hizmi and tells him, he said, all I want to do is do a scan. This is before Moshe Feiglin, before we did what you just saw. He said, I'm going to talk to Moshe Feiglin or to Hananya, and I can get it. Well, he couldn't. They wouldn't let him. You know what happened the day that he went to reply for that permit to do the scan? They shut Qumran down. And as far as I know, it's closed. That's just 2014. It's been 6 years.
Well, how did you get the permission to scan? Now let's get into that story. That's an interesting story.
Moshe Feiglin was the deputy speaker of the Knesset. He was a parliament member, what we would call a parliament, or England would call a parliament. He had diplomatic immunity. So he was frustrated. He said, I'll do it. He said, you show me what to do. And I did. We carried it and he operated it. So it was his scan and it was under his authority. Otherwise, it would have been illegal for me to do that. And I wasn't going to do it. I'm not going to do anything illegal over there to ruin the Copper Scroll project. So with his approval, it was on him. And I am always be indebted to that guy. He's got some guts, I'm telling you.
He's still alive, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's still alive.
People seem to die mysteriously. So,
yeah.
Well, this is really interesting stuff. What was real interesting to me, too, is the lady you were just talking about that was in Oklahoma. Can you tell that little background story and the coinkydinks? You know how there's no such thing as coincidences. But this kind of led you into this whole process, and I believe it was God's confirmation to you to continue. Tell us that little story.
I was working for a small college here in Lawton. It's called Comanche Nation College. And I was teaching investigative report writing for the college. So I go in there and I'm teaching and they hear about my project. Well, the lady that's in number 2 in charge of the project, her name was Juanita Pataponi. Juanita calls me into her office. She said, Jimmy, I saw your I did a presentation for the college during lunch one day. They called it their brown bag seminar. So after I was over, she said, come in my office. I sat down with her. She said, Jimmy, I think I can help you with your project. And I'm thinking, you're a sweetheart, nice lady, but how are you going to help me? And she said, well, I know one of the people that works for the Antiquities Authority. And she goes into this long story. And I had to go home. I was waiting on her. And I said, well, Juanita, what does he do? Is he a janitor? What does he do there? She said, no, Jimmy, he is the head of the Antiquities Authority of Israel. And she got my attention big time. I said, the head of the Antiquities Authority? I said, what's his name? Because I was going to Google it and find out. Sure enough, his name was Shuka Dorfman.
Yeah.
Shuka Dorfman. And she knew him. You know how? She was a sponsor for artillery officers out at Fort Sill. Her and her husband, who was Jewish, were sponsoring Israelis. And whenever they came over for training, they helped them find an apartment, helped them find food, showed them where to shop at, that kind of stuff. They sponsored them, had them over, have dinner with them. Well, they were all buddies. Her, Juanita Pataponi, his wife, Talma, they all got together. They got to be best friends. And she called him. She said, Shuka, I have a friend and you need to listen to him. I'm going to send him over there. And he, because they were best friends, he said, okay. And no kidding, Chris and I got on an airplane. 2 weeks later, we were in Israel. he picks us up at this little flea bag hotel me and Chris are staying in, and we go to the Rockefeller Museum. No, I'm sorry, Citadel Hotel. We go to the Citadel Hotel. Shuka's son was a manager there, so they arranged for us to have a nice big area to go to, a nice overview with the Temple Mount just below us. That's where we met. That's where I showed him all my research, and the guy was pretty frustrated when I told him I figured out the Copper Scroll, and literally he kind of melted in his chair. He was a gentleman, but you could tell he was frustrated. He said, "Okay, show me." By the time I reached location number 4, he was on board. Was he not, Chris?
Yeah, that's when he got on the phone, called the head of the Antiquities Authority of the West Bank, Itzhak Magen, and 2 days later, we were in the Rockefeller Museum, sitting at a round table with the two head archaeologists, secretary, Shuka Dorfman, Jim. You'll see the famous picture. I'm the one who took the picture, but you don't see it. But they're all looking at the research. And Itzhak didn't like it too much, but I remember he was a little upset because they just did a 10-year report. And here Jim, Cowboy Jim comes in from Oklahoma and lays out this other theory. And no disrespect to those guys. They were looking at things on the surface like archaeologists do, but Jim was talking about things under the surface, and so we really had to kind of challenge him a little bit to say,
well, Jim had God penetrating radar. That's why he was able to figure things out.
Penetrating radar, yeah, he had the divine help.
And I believe that. Chris and I both believe that this is not about Jim Barfield. It's not about Chris Knight. It's not about the Copper Scroll Project. This is about God, and Guys, I figured it out way too easy. I mean, I was a good investigator. I'd won Investigator of the Year for Oklahoma and Investigator of the Year internationally. But I don't think it had anything to do with that. I think God had implanted this stuff into my mind, and that's.
Now you said that even when you were a child, you had an impression that God had called you, and it had something to do with the Ark of the Covenant. Isn't that what you said you were told me on the phone?
Yeah, I did. And what happened is something very strange happened one night. Time was missing. Time from 10 o'clock at night until like 9 o'clock in the morning the next day. It was completely bright. All that time, I was wide awake when the time began and wide awake whenever it ended.
And how old were you?
I'm sorry?
How old were you when that happened?
12 years old in 1967. I remember that. And it was a spring or summer break. So I was wide awake when I fell asleep or whatever happened. I don't remember going to sleep. And I was wide awake when my eyes opened. I was wide awake, and I was terrified because it was dark, and then all of a sudden it was light of day. Went in to tell my mom. She ran me off. Thought I was nuts, and I guess that happens a lot. People think I'm nuts, but I'm telling you, it was like God had implanted this information in my head, and I can remember when I was growing up. I didn't start going to church till I was like 35 years old. I didn't know anything.
At that experience you had was the beginning of what you said you felt a call or some kind of attraction to the Ark?
Yeah. Matter of fact, I told my wife, I said, before I married her, we celebrated our 42nd anniversary a couple of days ago. And I said, listen, I want you to know there's something I got to do. And I said, it's really important. And she looked at me, she said, what is it? I said, I don't know, but I know. And then every time I'd see anything about the Ark of the Covenant, TV shows, documentaries, there's always something about the Ark of the Covenant on TV. I would be just engrossed in it. And I had no Bible background. We went to church for about a year when I was a kid, and that was it. And it wasn't until I was 35 before I started going to church again.
Amazing testimony. And then this other thing that I heard somebody, I don't know if it was Chris because I listened to you guys on some other programs, that you were talking about how It might have been Chris, but there was a shofar that was sounded, and the coincidence of that being like only a few blocks away from where you lived. Whose story was that?
That was my story.
Tell me that story.
I had gone online, and I met this lady online that was teaching Bible, Hebrew versions of the Bible out of Bethel, Israel. She was on a radio program over there, and you had to sign in. I signed in. I was listening to these guys. She saw my name, and you had to have a sign-in name. And again, this was out of Bethel, Israel. She looked at, she said, "Jim, where are you from?" Because it said my name was Jim Apache OK, meaning Jim from Apache, Oklahoma. She said, "Where are you from?" I said, "I'm from Apache, Oklahoma." And she said, "What?" She said, "I'm in Elgin, Oklahoma." Now, this is a Jewish lady. This is not a lot of Jewish community here in Oklahoma. But she was Jewish, and she said she was in Elgin, Oklahoma. That's where I met my wife, which is about 7 miles from here, something like that. And I was just pretty interested. Anyway, we got to talking online after, the class was over, and she invited us to come to her house for a Shabbat meal, me and my wife. And we go. Guys, she was not being accurate. I was not being accurate. She lived about 6 miles to the west of Elgin, and I lived about 2 miles to the north of Porter Hill, which is right in the middle. Anyway, she had heard shofar blasts on Shabbat, but it was my son and my son-in-law, who was, of course, married to my daughter, and they were blowing shofars, and she said she wondered why every Friday night at Shabbat she kept hearing these shofars blowing. And she was at her home preparing to get ready for the Shabbat. She knew that. She was only a block away from my son and a block and a half away from my son-in-law and my daughter.
That is amazing, and that's amazing. That is great. And these brothers here are Messianic believers in Yeshua. So for all you guys out there that are wondering, Messianic believers in Yeshua, it's definitely, I believe it's a very interesting practice, because it is close, I believe, to the first century Christians. And I personally have had a big interest in searching it out myself, the history, the roots, the foundations of our faith. When you go back to the original language, you go back to the history, you go back to, seeing how it all dovetails. There's not a disconnect between the old covenant and the new covenant. It seamlessly connects together. And so I always like listening and really getting into these discussions, especially when it actually is, evidence too. You got the evidence right there with what these guys are doing out there in Israel. So do you guys expect to get back to Israel anytime soon? Or what's going on with the Qumran? Are they really still shut down?
Yeah, it's shut down. All of Israel shut down right now, just like we are. What's going to happen, my goal is, we've got some people supporting us in Israel. I don't mean financially. I mean they're supporting us because we don't ask for money. And they're supporting us with talking to people. One of the gentlemen he's a millionaire, and he's going to people in Israel, Knesset members, that sort of thing. He's going to arrange a meeting at one of his mansions. He's got 2 beautiful mansions there in Israel, and try to get them to sign off on me finishing the excavation we started in 2009. So we've got some support, and I plan to I would have already been back there had it not been for this coronavirus thing. Matter of fact, we would be leaving for Scotland here in a couple of days. We had a big conference set up over there. But I want to go back to Israel. I want a meeting with Netanyahu, Benjamin Netanyahu. And honestly, I believe he already knows about us. I'm 90% sure that he knows about us.
Now, this man that you're telling me about that has the mansions there, and by the way, to have a mansion in Israel, you got to be very wealthy.
Very wealthy.
Who does he know that he can get you in on this and to get you back in there to do the excavations? Does he have connections to hire?
Yeah, he does. He's got some political connections in Israel, and he's got money. So he does some events. I don't have permission to give his name right now, but he does events for the Holocaust survivors, that sort of thing. his son-in-law owns a tour business there in Israel, and he is actually setting up to do tours in Israel about the Copper Scroll Project. And once this coronavirus thing is over with, people ought to look him up. His name's Gilad Rosinger, and it's Radiant Group is the name of his tour company. And maybe if I get a chance, I'll be able to go over there and do the tour personally. That would be awesome for me too, and I get a chance to talk to some more dignitaries.
Wow, this is just amazing information. So,
well, there's more on the what we're waiting for. Jim and Mrs. COVID-19, but Israel's about to go on a fourth election. And if you've been following Israel, you know that Gantz and Netanyahu have been going back and forth, and they haven't been able to establish a government. I think May will be a year that this has been going on. But what's valuable for us at the project is this idea of annexing the West Bank. And if they annex the West Bank, they bring the area of Qumran in under the IAA, the Israel Antiquities Authority, and it moves it out from under this Oslo agreement. Yeah,
that is huge. Amazing. And
right.
they're getting close to doing this. I've been hearing about this.
Yeah, so if that happens, some of the hindrances that could have been taking place out there is the fact, if you understand the Oslo agreement, any archaeological finds are supposed to be stored away in preparation to be passed over to Palestine. So, if you think the ark's there or anything of value, you're not going to want to pull it out under those circumstances. But if they annex everything, they change the boundaries, then that pulls it all back under Israeli authority. And hopefully that will open up a door and remove some hindrances that have kept people from going out there and just exploring Jim's research. I want to say, just so it's in the video, that there's a lot of people in Israel who are passionate about the rebuilding of the temple. They're passionate about rebuilding the items. And I really want to challenge anyone, if they ever come across this video, that if you're truly that passionate, you would fight for Jim's research. You would take Jim out there, you would get this research, and you would investigate it, because you got nothing to lose. If those things are there, you got everything to gain. And you can check this off your box if they're not. It's worth the time and the effort to head over there and say, you know what, guys, we've got to confirm one way or the other that these things are there and put it to rest. If they are, great, let's get them out, let's get them safe, let's get them ready for the restoration of the temple and whatever those items are for. If they're not, then fine, we're okay with that too. At least we know what's going on.
Guys, I really think we are so close to seeing that happen. I personally got a witness in my own heart and spirit when I started listening to you guys recently that it's close. I really think we're close to seeing this being pushed over into the realm of politically freeing things up, and especially with what you guys are talking about with the West Bank and all the political maneuvering going on there and the reorganization of the land, control of the land. This political process in Israel, once it's said and done, is when this peace process, which is supposed to reorganize everything over there, is going to be finalized. And I believe that's when the whole temple thing, everything shifts. And I bet you anything, this site is going to be excavated at that point, because they probably, like you were saying, Chris, they were holding this until this all comes about, because they know all this is being shifted here with the West Bank.
Yeah, I hope so. That
is a possibility, that they're waiting. Whether you hate Trump or love him, he has done an amazing, wonderful things for the biblical world. It's now possible. If they do, like Chris said, if they annex they call it the Jordan Valley. If they annex the Jordan Valley, then all is, like Chris said, all the extra laws from the Oslo Accords are thrown to the side, and then Israel can operate like Israel. And guys, listen, those things belong to Israel, not to anyone else, not to the United States, not to Jim Barfield, not to anybody other than Israel. And when those things come out of the ground, punch your stopwatch, because it's happening. Things are underway, and our Messiah is at the door. And guys, that's what this is all about. This is about God. This is not about treasures. It's about the bride that's coming. Even the Jewish people recognize that. And I should say, absolutely, they recognize that, because guess what? They were the ones that wrote the Bible. And it's happening. It's happening. And I believe that the things that we've been waiting for, all the Sunday schools that we went to, all the Bible studies we've done, this is what we're looking for. I believe that with all my heart. And if these things show up, make sure to get your families in church, get your families in the synagogues, and you better get ready, because the time is here.
You don't even want to wait for those things to come out to get ready. And just to piggyback on what Jim shared, the Ark of the Covenant has been in exile since the time of King Solomon. And there's an important message in that, I believe, is that the Ark of the Covenant represents mercy and the glory of God. When you study the story of Ichabod, the whole name was based on when the Ark left, the glory left. And so the Ark has been in exile ever since King Solomon, but there's a message in that mercy has been in the Gentiles for a long time. But if that Ark comes out into the open, that mercy seat comes back out, that's mercy returning back to Israel. Romans 11 talks about when this time of the Gentiles come to its fullness, mercy shall return to Israel. And that's what Jeremiah was talking about.
I got to interrupt. I got to just insert here really quick. That, to me, is the most exciting thing. That when I heard you say that earlier, because I heard you talking to somebody else, I was doing a little research on this. And when you said that the times of the Gentiles would be fulfilled, which I think we're getting to that point, that would be the time that this ark is actually brought back for this rebuilding of the temple, because this has been going on. This rebuilding of the temple buzz has been, I've been hearing for the last, 3 or 4, 5 years, even longer, but especially in the last 2 or 3 years. And that this potentially could be the moment when all of these things are going to start unfolding. That would be the end of this cycle, which I feel like that's where we're at right now. I don't know what it is. It's just something inside me.
That'd be the marker. I truly believe there's 2 places in the scripture where you hear about the ark that potentially talks about it in the future. The ones, I believe, in Jeremiah 3. If you pay attention to the terminology, I don't have the documents, but you can read it. It basically talks about Israel while they're in captivity. The ark didn't come to mind. They couldn't visit it. And there was a couple other points. Well, it made sense because while they were in exile, the ark is in exile. They couldn't visit it because they were in exile. And it didn't come to mind because every year when they would go up, they couldn't do those things anymore. But it says when they return back to the land, they will no longer do those things, meaning they will no longer not be able to visit it. It will come to mind again. And it's saying that it will be restored. And it specifically shows that the time of the restoration of the Ark of the Covenant is also during the time of the restoration of Israel and the 2 houses of Israel. The restoration of these 2 houses is the culmination when the age of the Gentiles comes to its close. The mercy that leaves the Gentiles comes back to Israel, and we're going to see this massive gathering and this restoration of 2 houses. And I believe the ark is probably the biggest sign. It says in Joshua 1 or something, Joshua, when they're crossing the Passover or the Jordan, that's prophetic of the second Exodus. And when the priests grab the ark and they start to march across the water, Joshua says, when you see the priest bearing the ark, get up from your place and go after it. It's a call to gather. So if the ark were to emerge today, would that be a signal to us that we need to get up and we need to go? Because mercy is leaving the nations and it's going back to Israel. And I don't know if I want to be stuck in the nations when that happens.
Wow. Yeah. And I've heard about that. A lot of people believe that, what do they call it? When they go back to Israel, what do they call that for the Jews? I don't know about the Gentiles, but they have a name for it. Aliyah?
Aliyah. Mm-hmm.
Would you guys think about, have you ever thought about moving to Israel?
Oh, we talk about it periodically, because let's face it. My home's paid for. Everything I got is practically, got a couple of things I need to owe a little money on, but everything's paid for. Why would I want to leave all this to go to Israel? I can tell you why. It's because it ain't going to be safe anywhere but in Israel at some point. If all the stuff we know from the studies, the biblical studies, there's going to be a lot of things happening. And, God wants us to live in Israel. He wants his people to live in Israel. Matter of fact, to this day, it's considered, if you're living outside of the land, which is Israel, you're in the land of the dead. And I don't mean that ugly to anybody, not at all. But that you want to be as close to God as you can get. Everybody that believes in God, that's what they want. Matter of fact, there's a term that's secret. This is only really hidden secret on the Copper Scroll. It's 7 Greek words. And remember, this is Hebrew. This has all been done in Hebrew. There are 7 Greek words on the Copper Scroll. Did I tell you about this, Robert?
No, you haven't.
Yes. 7 Greek words. And there are groupings of, 3, maximum of 3 letters. Well, I tried to figure out what they were, and I think I've done it. There's K-E-N is what it looks like. It's Greek letters, and I took the value of the K and I matched it with the value of the Hebrew. Each one has a number value. So I found the matching number value for Hebrew, Greek to Hebrew, Greek to Hebrew, and the word spelled Cohen. Then it spelled. Here's what it said. At the end of the day, here's what the letters spelled out. And the 6th age, hand, priest, drink, spirit, grace, and wilderness. Now, if you put that together in like a regular Hebrew sentence, in the 6th age, the hand of the priest will give drink to the spirit of grace in the wilderness. That's right out of the book of Jeremiah, Isaiah, and Chris, tell them what you know about the grace information.
Well, the word grace can be interpreted as mercy. I was just sharing on that a minute ago in Jeremiah. When you just spoke that, Jim, that one of the thoughts that came to mind, I was reading in Isaiah 26 this morning. Was it Isaiah 26? And it talks about near the end of there, this woman giving birth. And during this time, the dead will be raised, and she's to go into the chambers. And I thought, well, gosh, that sounds a lot like Revelations 12. There's a woman giving birth, and then the woman flees into the wilderness. So I wonder if that grace in the wilderness, or that mercy in the wilderness, is when that woman in Revelations, she flees where she's kept for 3.5 years, and she's fed and she's kept safe from the serpent. And during that time, that is symbolic of being in the chamber or ending in there where in Ezekiel she passes under the rod. But the mercy, I already explained the mercy. So I truly believe that, Robert, just as you said, when I rode the plane for the first time in 2007, my first trip to Israel was Jim's second trip. And I was praying and I was asking Father, what is this all about? Because I was just starting to become aware of the Copper Scroll. I didn't even know what the Copper Scroll was when Jim called me the first time and we began to talk about it. And that's the moment that God began to show me the end of the Gentiles, that we are at the close. And I truly believe in 2012 and through the whole time of 2016, we have entered into the end of days. We're not at the very end, but we've begun the process of these end of days. And it doesn't mean we're in the 7-year period, but something's shifted. Ever since the blood moons, ever since Trump came into office, the whole transferring of the land back, Jim could share about the Jubilee, something shifted. And I truly believe that we are in the beginning of the end of the days before the Messiah returns. So what I mean is that the end of the Gentiles is coming to an end. And the second place you see the Ark of the Covenant in Scriptures is in Revelation 7, right after the trumpet blows, the temple opens up and you see the Ark. And that 7th trumpet, from what I understand, is the climax or the end of the age. And then we begin the process of the coming of Messiah. So,
would that be a millennial reign period that you would think that is upon the world? If this millennial reign, now Jacob's troubles, do you think that comes first and then the opening up of the temple?
Yeah, just from what I understand, when you study the book of Revelations and the 4 horses release, without getting too far into some of this stuff, I believe that's the beginning of Jacob's troubles, because some of the people in there you see persecuted first is the church. God will deal with the church first, then he'll deal with those who persecuted the church. So when we really hit the hard times, I believe Jacob's troubles is the beginning of the birth pains.
Do you guys think that this pandemic is a part of possibly some of those things that are happening now that are leading to globalism, possibly the beginning of the tribulation? Because a lot of people believe this, that this is the beginning. This isn't just going to end here with a reopening, but it's going to actually lead to a lot more controls on populations, tracking, etc., that could possibly usher in a mark. Could we actually be there too?
Yeah, I think there's a lot going on right now that's indicative of the times that we've been searching for and waiting on. The division in this country, and it's the same division is happening in Israel. You know, it's like the believers, the Bible believers against the atheists. There's a Bible believers against the, child molestation, murder, you name it. It's wicked in a level that, and I'm only 65 years old here in a few days, but it's the most wicked I've ever seen this country in. And there's things that you're talking about that are coming in there right with it. Chris mentioned the Jubilee cycles of the Jubilee. And whenever you remember when, I'm going to call him Yeshua, Jesus, remember when Yeshua was in Nazareth, he went back to Nazareth, and he pulled out the book of Isaiah and he started reading from it.
Right.
He said, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted and preach deliverance of the captives and recovering the sight of the blind, to set at liberty those that are bruised, to preach the acceptable year of the Lord." Now, most Christians have no clue. But guys, that was a beginning of a Jubilee year. What he was doing, he was proclaiming the beginning of the Jubilee year. You know what they do in the Jubilee year? They set the captives free. Leviticus 25:13. In the Jubilee year, you shall turn each one to his respective property. That's what it's talking about. And there is a scroll in the Dead Sea Scrolls called the Melchizedek Scroll. It gives you the date of Yeshua's crucifixion, and it tells you exactly when it was to happen. And the guys, it happened in exactly the year, and it even gives his name. People don't know that the Dead Sea Scrolls have got information in there that is huge, massively huge to all of us.
Now, why is it that we don't know? Is it because the Israelis have kind of hid some of these things from the West? Why is it that we don't know about this?
Jews aren't hiding anything. And I'm telling you, if there's any cover up, it's from a very big church. And I'll just leave it at that. That's where the cover up's coming from, because they had control of the Dead Sea Scrolls. They were the one that wouldn't let the Jewish people read them.
Right.
Now, how does that happen? But guys, there are 3 prophecies in the Dead Sea Scrolls. This one in particular gives the date of the crucifixion. There's another one that gives the date of the birth of John and Yeshua, and there's another one that tells about the destruction of the temple. So there's stuff in there that is just massively important, but it's been hidden from us.
These scrolls that you're talking about that were in the Dead Sea Scrolls, that were found in the cache of Dead Sea Scrolls, were written at the time of Jesus, or even right before, that were chronicling all of these dates. Or these weren't prophetic scriptures that were predicting it. They were actually being written at that very moment.
No, these are probably, that I'm reading, the one that I just read to you was written well before that, because there's one in there, the one that gives the date of the birth of John and Yeshua was written well before that. So probably these are prophecies. Probably these are prophecies, and it gives it. I mean, you can take it to the year and maybe even the day, depending on how you look at it.
You know, when John came out of the wilderness, the Baptist. He came from Qumran. I really believe that.
Yes. You know, their title, their role is talked about. One is the Messiah of Israel, and the other is the Messiah of Aaron, or a priestly Messiah. Guys, now think about this. Listen and think about this. How is it that Yeshua, Jesus, is a priest, a high priest, if he's not a Levite? How do you do that? I'll tell you how you do it. It tells you in the book of Revelation. It says that 144,000 You've got 12,000 from this tribe, 12,000 from this tribe, and it talks about the restoration of the Melchizedek order. What order was Yeshua from? He was from a priest of the order of Melchizedek. Says it in Hebrews, book of Hebrews. How does that happen? Guys, it's coming. There's a restoration coming of the Melchizedek order. And what the Melchizedek order is, the firstborn of every family was supposed to have been dedicated to the Father. And if you didn't want him dedicated, what do? You redeem him. You pay the redemption price and you buy him back. You see that? Now we are entering into a time that this very thing could be happening. Whenever I teach, whenever I go to I've been in large congregations or groups, gatherings, where there's 100, 200, 300 people, and I will ask them, how many people, men and women, in this room are firstborn? And the majority of the hands fly up.
That's me. I'm the firstborn of four boys.
See?
Yeah.
I'm firstborn. Chris, you're not firstborn, though. He's like,
no, I'm secondborn, but the scripture does say that the church is the church of the firstborn. So if in Acts 2, it shows that the church existed in the wilderness before Pentecost. He said the stone that followed them through the wilderness, he calls it the church. So the church is Israel. I mean, I'm just going to say it right out. If you are a part of the church, you've been grafted into the promises, the covenants, and the adoption of Israel. God's raising out of the Gentiles a people for his name to replace, I'm not teaching replacement theology at all, but they are part of that grafting in of Israel. So anyone who's a part of that, it says you're the church or the called out of the firstborn. Priesthood.
So it's underway, my friend. It's underway.
Yeah.
This is beautiful, guys. You guys have so much to share, and I know that we just scratched the surface. I mean, literally, you guys, what I want to do maybe is get you guys back on again soon and have you guys go into great detail with all of your pictures, graphs, whatever you want to do. And maybe you could even pre-record it if you would like, and we could play it and then have you commentate on it after with maybe question and answers if people want to. Maybe we got a large chat room here of at least 420 people here in the chat right now live. We could get to a point where we could ask questions. If you want, we could ask questions. I don't know what you guys' schedule's like, but we could do that. We could set it up for another time, or we could take some questions now. If anybody's got a couple quick questions you want to ask.
I've got the rest of the evening, so I'm good.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Chris or for Jim? Anybody? I'm going to look at some of your guys' questions in the chat. I'm going to take a couple questions. It gives a 10-second delay, so I have to wait till I hear it.
No problem.
But it looks really good on the screen here, guys. I don't know if you guys go back and look. Everything looks really good. So hopefully we can do this again with more information and it, a real good flow of this is really great. I think somebody's going to pick up on this and hopefully it goes far and wide. Let's see. Somebody asked, do you ever feel unsafe, Jim? They asked you if you ever feel unsafe because of what you maybe because of what you know.
That is a very, very good question. Chris and I both were with Yehuda Glick. We were doing a TV pilot for a TV series, and Yehuda Glick had on a bulletproof vest because he had been shot, I think, 4 times in his upper torso. And we were with him. He had a bulletproof vest on, and all we had on were T-shirts. So yes, I do. And I'm very careful. We're in a state where it's you're authorized to carry concealed. And guess what? I do take it very serious. And when we're in Israel, we take it very serious. Whenever we filmed a couple of times, we had the bodyguards with us. So yes, there is a possibility of being injured. But you know what? I believe the guy that sent me on this mission, if I really am on a mission, God is going to take care of me until the last minute. And so thank you. That was a very good question, whoever asked that.
Okay, yeah, another question. Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
No, I was just, when we met, Yehuda Glick, he's a really precious man. And he contacted us right when we were headed to the airport. We couldn't visit with him. He wanted to use our scanner. We had to go home. And then I don't think we were home a few months. And then he gets shot because he represents the Temple Mount. And it really was a wake up call for us too, that we do need to be mindful. And then when we get back, we finally see him again. He has to have a police entourage around him anytime he goes around the Temple Mount, because the Palestinians want to finish what they started. And but I agree with Jim. Whenever we're in Israel, I've always felt safe. We were over there when a war broke out in Gaza one time. My mom is freaking out and calling me and texting and wanting to get home. But, I honestly, that we were driving down the Dead Sea. The Israeli jets fly right by us. They're going so fast, we don't hear them till they're way behind us. You hear the boom, they cut over. You could feel the ground shaking from the different things that were hitting. But I've never felt more safe than when I did in Israel. It's just, you just know that God's hand is on the project. And I want to just really quickly, the dream that I had, when God said that Jim was 95% accurate, I knew from that day forward that Father's hand was on this, that in the beginning he was wanting to say, listen, I'm showing Jim these things. He's going to be 95% accurate. Put this anchor of faith in your pocket and don't ever forget it. So whenever we get scared or we get nervous or everything that God's not in it, I've never had to struggle with that doubt. I know God's hands on it. I know God's hands on Jim. Jim's had a lot of loss personally in his family during the time of the project. So he's already experienced, quite a bit of loss.
Well, there's a lot of people here saying that they're praying for you guys and your safety. They love your work. A lot of people are saying this very interesting. Let's see, there's another. Any plans to go back and excavate more soon? Somebody asks.
Yes. Yeah, we're planning to get back over there as soon as we can, and we want to look Benjamin Netanyahu in the eye and say, okay, here's what we got. Here's how many people have already put their stamp of approval on it. Why won't you let us dig? And let's get this stuff out of the ground, because Chris and I, the only thing that we're asking for from the Israeli government is they let me, my wife, Chris, my buddy Matt Kaiser sit there and watch these things come out of that cave. And that would be to us the greatest reward we could possibly imagine on this earth anyway.
Amen. And you guys, because you brought all the attention to this and found all these encoded, it really wasn't encoded, it was pretty clear, it looks like, but you did have to know ancient Hebrew, right? You have to understand a little bit more about the language to be able to see it. You guys pulled this out, no? No, what I did was I grabbed a Strong's Concordance. I knew I had studied the ancient Hebrew letters. I knew the script. And I just find a word, plug in what it meant from the Strong's Concordance, find the next word, plug it in, and that's what I did. Wow. It's that easy. And you remember what I told you. I believe God's hand was on this from the very beginning, and he made it possible. He gave me all the things. I used to be a helicopter pilot for the Army, and I learned how to read maps. I knew all the stuff that I needed to be able to do. God had already provided for me, and he provided a great buddy, Chris Knight and Matt Kaiser, and he provided a wife that is absolutely perfect for this mission. She is total support to me. Now, somebody asks, have you guys written any books under your own names?
No, I've got the Copper Scroll research that is copyrighted and protected, but I can't release it until after a discovery is made. Once a discovery is made, then I'll release it. But that's just to let people know this is what we found, and it was amazing. Can you imagine taking pictures of that stuff as it comes out of that cave? That would be incredible.
Now, you have the copyright on what now?
Actually, Shirley and I share the copyright on the Copper Scroll Project, the book that's out now. But again, that's a story about the Copper Scroll Project. But I strictly own the Copper Scroll Project research. It's about 295-page document about how to understand the Copper Scroll.
What you were just showing them earlier.
Yeah. Thank you.
Gotcha. So I guess for all that research that you have, if and when that is recovered, the credit all goes to you. There's no one that's going to be able to take the credit for this. it's solely on you because you've copyrighted all the research.
You know, you wouldn't believe how many people have tried to shaft us. And a vast majority of them were Christians. That breaks your heart. They tried to pull some shenanigans, and I really don't want to go into that right now, but I'm telling you, the Jewish people were very supportive. There was only one Jewish guy that did some really shady, sneaky stuff, and guess what? He was converted to Christianity. And I thought, oh my goodness, what is this saying? What is this telling my Jewish brothers? So I love my Christian brothers, and I wouldn't give them up for nothing. But guys, we need to work on our delivery.
Yes, yes. And they always say that you never want to work for a Christian because they want to get something on you because you're a brother.
It's terrible.
But so this is all ironclad. You guys don't have to worry legally about anything when it does come out because you guys have the rights, right? At least.
Yeah, nobody's ever figured it out. Vendel, he was in like about a 3/4 of a mile away. So yeah, whenever we researched for the Copper Scroll book that Shelley wrote, she was holding her breath, and she did a thorough job of checking if there's any other persons that had done it, and nothing compared to what we've done, not even close.
Yeah, just to comment on that, the book Shelley did, it tells our story up to a certain point, but if you're a type of person who loves to learn biblical stuff and get beyond some of the basics, you'll really love how she put not just the story together, but she weaves a lot of great information. I go back and read it sometimes too, and I'm just like, oh gosh, I relearn all over again. But Jim's research, if the items are there, if we go out there, and we never claim that they're there because we just don't know, but we do know that he's figured out the locations. But I was just sharing this with a friend the other day. I said, think about it. If the stuff's there and that stuff comes out, Jim's research will become the go-to book for the Copper Scroll. That's it. Every other one will no longer be able to compete. And there's no research out there today that as accurate as Jim's. When you go through each location, and it's too bad he can't go through a lot of them. It's just one after the other, where you see key markers out there. You're standing there and you're reading it and you're pointing down over and over. There's no research of the Copper Scroll that today that I know of, or Jim, that warrants more attention than what Jim's figured out.
Well, you guys have the timestamps. You guys have the actual footage. You have everything going way back. There's nobody that could ever go back in history and remake something that isn't there. You guys have done everything up to this point. Now, people might want to try to copy and piggyback on all the information, try to take credit, but there's no way that you can because of all the documentation that you guys already have. And like you said, that's copyrighted. Anything that does come out, it's going to go to you. You guys are the ones that they're going to go to congratulate and confirm that you were the source of finding this.
And we're gonna greatly appreciate people saying that kind of stuff, but we're gonna turn right around. Chris and I are gonna look them in the eye and say, no, the glory goes to God, because He's the one that gave it to us. He's the one that put it into our hearts. If we're right, and I say if we're right, but I believe we are. God gave it to us. God made it possible, and I want to make sure everybody understands that God gets the glory, not me and Chris, because Chris and I we're just going to be happy to be a part of it. Because think about it. We'll be part of biblical history. That in itself is a reward that will last throughout the generations of my family and Chris's family. So think about that.
Well, God bless you guys. I have so thoroughly enjoyed having you guys on tonight, and I hope to have you guys back on again real soon. And if you do have anything produced or anything that you want to channel through our channel, please let me know. If you have something that you record that you feel would be also good to put on here, and you can come right back on live as well with it, with any kind of recording, and commentate or whatever you want to do, we can get more of this information out. And I really think that by getting it out there, like you said, get that information out there, it pushes the hand, and it also it's a safety mechanism to get that, I believe, the world to see, what's really going on here. It needs to be looked at. We don't want to hide it, because at this point, hiding it isn't going to help anything. At this point, it needs to be out there for everybody to see.
Absolutely. And ask your audience, and I'll ask them, please. I don't want your money. Chris, we don't want your money. We want you to pray for us, because prayer is what got us this far. And I'm being very serious. That's what's going to get us through to the end of this. Pray for our safety, please, and safety of our families. I've lost 14, 15 family members since this Copper Scrolls project started 13 years ago. And that's a high price.
Wow.
So guys, please, your prayers would be greatly appreciated. And the biggest thing is, I ask them to pray that we stand the Father's will, because that's the only place we can succeed, as long as we are in His will.
All right. Well, we're going to do that. In fact, I'm going to say a prayer right now in agreement with my audience, which I usually do. And we're going to ask God's blessings and covering over you guys, both Chris and Jim. And we ask, Lord God, that you continue to prophetically unfold these times and these events under the direction as you have inspired and anointed these men to facilitate the finding of these treasures that are your treasures. You said the hidden treasures, Lord, that in Christ, you said in Christ, it is like a hidden treasure. And Father, we pray for not only their protection, but also the connections they need. And those that have their eyes opened, that they would be bold enough to come out and stand with them in the Israeli government, as well as those that have the means to be able to facilitate whatever it is that needs to happen. God, I pray that it would be released, any holds, any demonic influences that are keeping this back from being the discovery of history, really, literally the discovery of history. If this is truly what we're looking at here, God, that you would confirm it once and for all, Lord, at this moment in time, this crucial moment. May it all come into play, all the pieces come together, we ask. In Jesus' name, continue to confirm this with signs, wonders, and miracles that follow these men as they go about to do this work. And I pray you open up those doors right now for them to go back into the land, go back to this site, and to look and to observe and to take the notes that they need to continue the unfolding of this discovery. We pray that you confirm it and that you give them great favor, and a great anointing from your very hand. Oh Lord, we thank you, Father, in the name of Yeshua, Jesus, the Messiah. We thank you, God, and we praise you. Amen. Brothers.
Amen. Good prayer.
I appreciate you guys.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you. This has been a really, really relaxed and a very enjoyable interview, and I thank you so much for that.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on as well. I appreciate that.
You guys are great guests, and you guys have an anointing that I really sense it, and that's why I wanted you on. And I pray that we continue to see where this goes. And I'm going to keep a very close, prayerful watch over your guys' ministry, because it is a ministry. It is a ministry to both Israel and to the world. And I pray that God brings it all together, because He is. But I mean, as we watch it, that it unfolds, and I want to be witnessing it. I don't want to be, I'm going to be watching and praying, because I believe this is a part of a lot of prophetic fulfillments that we're watching in our day right now, unfolding right before our very eyes. This is a part of it. And you guys are right there. So we're going to keep a close eye on you guys prayerfully as well.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you so very much. We greatly appreciate you.
God bless, Jim. We'll keep in touch, you and Chris, okay?
All right. Bless y'all.
All right.
Bless
God bless. Have a great night, guys.
Good night.
All right. That was great. What an awesome interview. These brothers were so awesome. I thank God for having them on, guys. I'm going to close out, guys, and I'm going to go back to Jim and Chris here real quick. So I will see you guys back again later on tonight. We'll go over some news, and I'll talk to you soon. Okay, guys? We'll see you soon. God bless.